Hello, my name is Jovanna and I am applying for the single subject credential program in art. So these are my figure drawings, 30 seconds. Because time is limited, you really have to focus on the movement of the body by using simpler lines. This is 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 5 minutes. Another 5 minute and a 10-minute. 30 minutes, as you can see on the drapery, is not as detailed as the 40-minute one. So my 2D design art, this is a Gudetama still life. I used a lot of the Gudetama characters to put on a box, and I used the siding technique to get proportions right, which is something I will teach students to get the proportions right. And then I used a lot of value in this drawing by having a light source. I used graphite charcoal pencil on a paper. This is a master copy drawing of girl with a pearl earring. I used graphite charcoal pencil on a light blue toned paper. So master copy, I could use the Anchor Standard 2.2 for 8th graders, which teaches students about copyright. So I could give them an assignment of researching one of their favorite artists, looking through their art, seeing what's interesting, and recreating one and just talking about it. Ominous woman, I can never say that word. I used compressed charcoal and vine charcoal on a paper. So I focused a lot on contrast here. The back is like pitch black, and her body is lighter, making her look like she's coming out of like a black portal of some sort. I used micron pens for this one. I focused a lot on value using dots. So this is called stippling, which is something I could show students, an alternative way to show value without shading. So the closer the dots together, the more dark it'll be, and the farther apart, the lighter it'll be. So, just another way you could experiment to get value. This is a distortion portrait of myself in a mirror. I used compressed charcoal pencil, and vine charcoal on a paper. So I used the grading method to get proportions down, which is something I could teach students, just getting a reference paper, labeling it with numbers and letters, and then getting another paper, recreating the same grid, and then just dotting down where the lines are on the reference paper. Bunny and Forest, I used graphite, white gel pen, and vine charcoal, and compressed charcoal on a paper. What technique did I use for the fur? So I have people ask me about this when it's quite simple. It's just like little lines, but to make it look like fur is focusing on the direction that the fur grows and how light and how dark it is. So I utilized the graphite pencils, the different hardness, to kind of give it more range and value that way. I used a white gel pen to really get the light to pop, like the whiskers, the little light in the eyes, and then for the background I used the the charcoal, the vine charcoal, because it's soft, and then a kneaded eraser to give it more dimension. Color pencil tags. So this is color pencil on paper, and I would really want to teach this because when I first started doing color matching, I wouldn't think that it would work, only because I initially thought like, how would that be possible if there isn't a color pencil color for every shade in the world, But I was able to do this by, really focusing on the warm tones or cool tones in a picture, and then layering a lot of the color pencils together to try to match the color as best as I could. So it's pretty interesting, and I would want to do this in class. Mushroom Still Life, I used acrylic. So I set up a little arrangement, and I focused a lot on like little highlights and light. If I were to teach this in class, I would have students make a color wheel first, so they could see like the different hues and tints and tones and shades of color. So it would really help them out in their own painting. Still life value. This was a little bit different in creating because of the different use of paint. This one was easier to blend, but pretty interesting to work with because I have only used acrylic before this. So this was pretty interesting. This one is in black and white because I mainly focus on the value, looking at the different planes of like the top of the cylinder or the cube, just really differentiating the highlights with the rest of the picture. Another still life, but in color. To create something like this, I would first tell students to get the basic colors down, and then have them turn in like the first part of just the colors, and then have them go back as a part two to really get those different shades in, like the lemon in the water bottle. That water bottle is like pretty reflective. So my first round, I didn't really notice the yellowness on the water bottle because of the lemon. So I think this would be really interesting for like students to really observe their picture to get little details like that in their rainbow portrait. So this is a stylized portrait of myself when my hair was that color. I thought this was pretty interesting to make. I used acrylic. I used a lot of different colors in my hair. I like my personal work. I like to be very messy. I don't know why, but I really like the messy look. So I just have like all these splatters of paint everywhere, on my face, on my shirt, my hair. My hair is purple, but I did put a lot of little lines of blue and yellow and all that just to, make it pop out more. So I think it would be interesting to, have students create something that they personally like. Textured cat. So this was very interesting to make. I used just the palette knife. So when I was in school, I had a lot of friends that had an assignment that required them to make a painting using a palette knife, but I never had that assignment. But I wanted to try it out either way because I thought it would be interesting. Prior to this, I only made paintings using a brush. So I was like, how would it be using a palette knife? Like, I really want to try it out. So I thought it was interesting. I would just look at the colors of a cat, and instead of like, having to blend everything, I was just, putting everything with a palette knife. I really liked the texture that it gives because it's just a lot of like lines of paint without mixing. So in person, I love how the whiskers look because the whiskers really pop out because it's like three-dimensional because the fur is white and the whiskers are also white. I use the side of the palette knife to get like those lines, and I like how they stand out. Loud shapes. So this was really cool making because it shows you how to get like the principles of design without using color. Because when you think of like principles of design, you think of like a two-dimensional artwork, like using like color and design. But this was interesting. It's more like making me think, how could I incorporate the principles of design without using color? So I managed to get movement, unity, and emphasis with just these shapes, like the triangles kind of make you go around the artwork, and then this big circle in the middle, really has its focus. And I used white foam paper that I cut out and then sanded the edges to be smoother. This is ceramics. So to make this, you would have to put clay on the wheel, and then once you get your desired shape, cut off the shape, and then you would have to do something called scoring with the handle, and then use like little like cross hatching to glue together with like clay and water. I do currently work at an elementary school, and I had gave them this clay assignment where they had to make like little figures, and I didn't think I would have to show them something like scoring, but there was like two or three students that were struggling with like putting pieces together, and I was like, wait, I know, I know about that. So it was pretty cool. Applying what I've learned in, like real life. A fish comb. So I used a jeweler's saw to cut out a piece of wood, and then I made it smooth. I smoothed it down, and then I burned the little designs in it. So this comb isn't supposed to be functional. It's just like, for design. So childhood frame. So I could relate this to the anchor standard 3 for 7th graders, reflecting on an artwork that's personal to them, either like in an artist statement or, like presenting live. This is personal to me because it shows a picture of me holding a Care Bear. And if you know me, I'm obsessed with Care Bears. I literally have the whole collection. I have all of them. So this picture shows just how long I've liked Care Bears. I made this using copper and brass with a jeweler saw, and then putting it together, like the little rivets, and then I sanded it down to make it more smooth. Milky Way ring. Again, I used the jeweler saw to cut out like pieces of silver, and then I soldered together the pieces with the little blowtorch and the little like flux and all. This was really cool to make, very interesting. Something I thought I wouldn't make, but it's really cool to experiment and see what you can do as an artist instead of just sticking to paper. Jack in the Bell. So I can relate this to the anchor standard 2 for 8th graders, being not being afraid to experiment with work, breaking the rules. So I feel like in art school they really emphasize on like, taking good pictures of your artwork. So when I first took a picture of this, obviously it was with the lights on, but I was like, wait, what if I turn off the lights? Because when I made this is very personal to me. It's called Jack in the Bell because I was working at Jack in the Box and Taco Bell at the same time. It was very exhausting. That's why the clown has a sad face and the bell was supposed to show Taco Bell, and the Jack in the Box, well, it's a Jack in the Box. When I first took a picture of this, I thought it was a little too happy, and I was like, that's not the vibe that I'm going for. So I was like, what if I take a picture of it with the lights off? I liked it better that way because of the circus. I thought the little flash on the pin made it look like he had a spotlight on him. You know, he's like looks like he's like running away from the circus or something. So yeah, like not being afraid to experiment. Also, I used oil pastel on a canvas. I was gonna originally do acrylic paint, but I wanted to see what oil pastel looked like on a canvas. I wanted to see if it worked. So experimenting. I made the pin by riveting the little pieces of metal that I cut out, and then I hole punched the back and put a pin through there. Yellow Dream House. This is digital. I made this on Procreate. So if I were to teach students how to make something like this, I would have them draw out a lot of shapes and then put them together. That's how I come up with my designs. I just like I draw like these random shapes and stuff and just I just put them together and I pick the one that I like the most. So this is very fun to do. I always say that in another universe, I'm an architect because I don't know why, but I love creating like places like this, like just a lot of buildings. Um, I think it's because to me, it's I get to use my creativity because I always just draw random things and just put it together and make it look like something. So pretty fun. This is another design on Procreate. I could relate this to the Anchor Standard 2.3 for seventh graders, which is applying strategies or like different information to create a work of art without saying like what it is. So, for example, when I was in the process of making this, I was showing my friends and family and the first thing they thought of was Mexico, which, yeah, that's what it is. But how can I, like, how did I show that without saying what it was? So, like observing, like, what do they use? Like, what makes it look like Mexico? So, the colors of the houses, they're very colorful. The use of lots of plants, the designs on the buildings, the cactuses, the very sunny day. So if I were to teach a student how to show something through an artwork without um, saying just what it is. I would have them gather information of like what makes something what it is. Also, like having like these little like color palettes. So for me, I looked up like different color palettes in Mexico. My buildings, I noticed that they usually have blue and yellow together or orange and blue. So just like little things like that. My lesson plan. So my lesson plan is on watercolor. I have my list of equipments, my instructional strategies, teaching preparation, behavioral objectives, my content standards, ELA standards, EOD standards, my adaptations, for like English learners, like what can I do for kids that are learning English or like struggling readers, um, advanced students. If they know they could do better, if they want to challenge themselves, they can go ahead and, take the alternative route of making the project. Entry level, how can I find out where are they at in their skills? Asking them like, have they ever worked with watercolor before? Are they comfortable with it? Things like that. How would I monitor their progress? Having them turn in progress work or having planning pages, having them share a lot, and then how would I measure like their their work, what kind of feedback will students receive. So like if I have them turn in something um in the middle of the project, I could tell them like, oh, so they're doing good here, and I would suggest like different things that they could change. How would I connect it to the world at large? I would show them an example of an artist's work, and then my lesson overview, my introduction, and then the lesson, like every day, what I will be doing every day, like day 2, day 3, day 4, all of that. My lesson closure, how would I close my lesson? I would do it by having a final critique. Daily closure, how would I close the lesson every day? So like reminding students what's due, giving them upcoming due dates. This is my little chart on how I would grade their work. And then handouts. In my different days, I do show like when I would be giving them these handouts and like what they are. So these are all my handouts. And then this is my example work, um, handout 4, and then PowerPoints. In my days, it also shows when I would be presenting these PowerPoints. So watercolor, what is watercolor? Some examples, how they could use like different brushes, different watercolor techniques, and then my assignments. And then my second PowerPoint, principles of design and elements of color. This is just to like give a quick reminder of all of the stuff that they could incorporate in their painting. So I have all that. And then my third presentation, third and final. This is on the artist himself, presenting all of this and then showing some examples of his work and then showing mine and how I included the methods into my own assignment or my own painting. This is the assignment itself, and then this is for advanced students. So yeah, I have all of that there, and that is everything